It's 5:30, so we'll call to order this meeting for Monday, August 1st. Jordan, would you start us off with a roll call, please?
Please respond by stating present. Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Foberg.
Present.
Liebelt.
Present.
Reif. Councilmember Reif.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Reinbold.
Present.
Langer. Councilmember Langer.
Present.
Norvstrup.
Present.
Mayor Shoneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. First order of business will be to approve this week's agenda as printed. I do have one minor adjustment to include, which is a bill for consideration. I'm going to state it here so I don't have to later. It's Wells Fargo Commercial for clean water loan principal and interest, and the amount is $287,159.86. The bill listing remains unchanged at $205. The additional listing should be $261, $271.51 for a total of all bills adjusted to $561, $271.51.
Move to approve with that inclusion. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Johnson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next, we've got our approval of the minutes from the meeting of July 25th.
Move to approve.
I've got a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilman Norvstrup. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. We've got no one signed up that I'm aware to speak at the open forum, so we'll move along to our consent calendar item where we've got 5 items of routine city business. Can I get a motion to approve those items?
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Foberg and a second from Councilwoman Liebelt. Does anyone have anything of interest to say or question on any of these consent calendar items? Then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Old business, public hearing on petition to rezone and possible first reading of ordinance 220701, which rezones properties lots 1 and 2 of Fessenden Edition, which is at 8th Avenue Northeast from R2 to C2 District. Brett, anything new on that one? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following last week's discussion on the ordinance to rezone from R2 to C2, I added an additional paragraph at what would be the second full paragraph that basically makes the effective date of the ordinance contingent upon the property owner for the new rezoned property providing and recording with the Register of Deeds an easement for a tree line. And that language is in there that would require then a verification from City Manager Gaa within 60 days after the date of publication. If that 60 days verification is not met, then basically this ordinance would be of no force or effect. But we believe the language in the new paragraph there would cover the contingencies and concerns of the adjacent property owners to the north regarding a tree line being maintained and preserved. City staff would recommend approval of the ordinance.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Any questions or thoughts on this one? People are good?
Yeah, well done.
That is good. Thank you for your work on that. Ron, Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Foberg.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Norvstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got our budget message for next year, the 2023 budget year from City Manager Joe. Joe, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We finally made it to my favorite meeting of the year, and not all of my staff share that that same joy. But this is an exciting time for me. One, because we get to start discussing the budget, which really starts with department heads back in April. They start working through their proposals. They turn those in May. We discuss them in June. And then really through the months of June, the end of June and through July, Jordan and I fight back and forth about how to balance this darn budget. And I just want to give Jordan some kudos. This was his first one where he was leading the effort. There were some things that he was doing for the first time. And all in all, this is a really good budget proposal that he put together. I got a kick out of working on it with him and working through it. Got me a little more involved than I had been, and I thought that was good. So this was just a great process that we went through. And so really tonight is an opportunity to give you, the council, just a real brief insight of what we're going to talk about a little bit further along. But we will really get into this stuff in the work session. And I know some of you are excited to talk about this, and we'll get there. But a few technicalities first we need to discuss. It's just kind of an update on where we are funding-wise. So from the general fund, we'll talk about this a little bit on all funds, but one of the things, the theme of this, and on pages 7 through 9 in the first budget book, the operational budget, is some of these written comments, but you'll hear me use the phrase tonight, and in that address is cautious optimism is the theme for this budget. Because when you first start looking at it, if you look at it from a revenue standpoint, we are in really good condition. And the reason why we're in good condition is a lot of things that really to the average citizen may not be pleasant. One, property values are up. So we're seeing increased tax revenues through property taxes. Well, none of us love to pay property taxes, but that's where the majority, or I would say in this case, 35% of city general services come from. So it's really important to us. It's really important to them too, from a maintenance standpoint. But it's going up. So we're seeing those property values. That leads to increased revenues. And our second big fund in there is the sales tax. And, you know, I think back to when I got here in 2020, we were on a real high on sales tax. We ended the year in 2020 at 20% more. Last year, that dropped less than 2%. We were kind of expecting the bottom to drop out of it, and it didn't. This year, we were anticipating revenues to be about 10.6 million. As of last week, Jordan looked at the projections, and we're shooting about $250,000 above that. So not a lot, but we think we'll end up in the 10.7 to 10.8 range, and projecting about 3.5% onto that for next year. So as far as we look at the jumping into kind of what that translates to in the general fund, in 2021, we had revenues of just under 28 million. And we had expenditures of just under 27 million. So that's the good story, is we ended up about $1 million to the good, which is really fairly normal, and that's what we hoped for in that. And that was a good picture. In 2022, our budget, we always start off with even numbers, and both revenues and expenses was just under 29 million at 28,993,705. Again, going into it, revenue-wise or expense-wise, let's start with expenses. We were right on at the middle of the year, which was good, and we're a little bit ahead on the revenues, which is good. But I want to talk a little bit about the expenditures too, is why it's this cautious optimism, because we're seeing revenues come in higher. We're also seeing the cities in Indy too, so the cost of living that we're seeing everybody experience. We're seeing it too, especially in some of our projects coming in, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 more. So just because we're seeing our income come in doesn't mean our revenues or our expenses are better. They're actually increasing with it. And then one of the things that's really important when you start thinking about these things is that all of our money comes from somewhere else, more importantly, somebody else. And so we're really cognizant with that. And I think I feel pretty good about the number coming in for the general fund is pretty consistent. It seems somewhat large, but it's really pretty consistent. Is 30,575,000 is what we're projecting this year. So about a 5% increase. But when you look at what we're experiencing economically, it's probably not overly aggressive. So that's that. Given past projections, that would probably be we'll actually end up in 2023 about where we projected with starting in 2022. So that's not horrible. We probably won't see as much growth, but hopefully we see our expenses stabilize. So that's the first picture when we look at the general fund, and as kind of a reminder, the general fund are really the basic city services. Pretty much everything in this building, public safety functions, public works, and the library. So the big ones there in the general fund. Then we get to all the funds, which is the general fund plus everything else included. That's our utility funds. There's a few other enterprise funds, Parks and Rec, the airport, sales tax, promotions, and then the TIFs. We account for the TIFs in there as well. And so if you start looking at where we were in 21, our revenues were quite a bit more than our expenditures in those funds. So that's very good news. We're budgeted this year almost even. We were pretty close. And again, we feel pretty good on track with that. We see our sales tax trending a little bit more, which is affecting that, and the promotions fund slightly. A few other things tracking well too. So we feel pretty good about the revenues on that. The total budget, if you take all of the city funds in the proposed 23 budget, is $84,739,230. And I'm gonna, if anybody passed out, wake them up, because quickly I want to show that's a big jump, but we can attribute all of it to the fact that we're starting a $57 million wastewater improvement project, and further down the line you'll see about a $7.5 million number projected for 2023. So really the increase in the overall fund of the city is that large capital project starting, which we'll see some grant funding come from that in the early year or two of that. Then we start in with the clean water SRF loan that we got for water. So there's the summary of all of the funds. A couple other things we need to touch on here early on is our debt service. So this is, again, some good news. Conflicted, possibly cautious optimism as far as good news. But last year we paid off some bonds early, so that was good. So the existing debt number went down from 31.7 to 24.5 million. So that's good progress. The better part of the good news, or the second part of the good news, is what makes our debt limit look even better is the property values are going up, so that directly correlates. So instead of a borrowing power of 101 million, it's now almost 110. The good news for our citizens is we are a very debt cautious society here. Our council through the years has been very cautious. Initially, when we paid off those bonds, I thought that we might have some projects ready to bring forward to you in 23. We're not there yet. We see a few starting, but not really what I thought we would be ready for, which is good news. It means we'll save that for a couple more years, and that will be helpful. So our debt service capacity, we're in good shape there. The capital expense highlights, again, we'll talk a lot about this next week at the work session, but our street and bridge improvement program is remaining strong. That comes out of the sales tax. That's great news. We've got some equipment for police and fire. One thing I'll talk about, especially with the new council members, is those are coming from our reserve funds, and we'll talk at the meeting next week, the work session, about how that came about. That helps us make balancing the general fund a little bit easier. Public works, quite a bit of equipment, some of it pretty expensive, but some of it's pretty old and worn out, so they haven't abused it in any parts of that. The next part, probably some of the funnest money we spend is in the Parks Capital Program, a little over $500,000 this year. We're at about, for 23, we're right about $500,000 this year. So a little bit more. We feel positive about that. People love our parks, and keeping those up is very critical. Traffic control upgrades. This is going to be a little bit of a change as we move forward for the 22 budget, and it will be pushed forward to 23 before we're finished, is a traffic signal at what I call the 3M intersection. So everybody will know where that is, out at 8th Avenue. After that, we don't have any new signals really to put up. It will be replacing some existing ones. adding some new technologies and new features as we go along. So that'll kind of be a transition from what we've done the last few years. In utility infrastructure improvements, a significant amount there. Some of that goes with some of the street projects. They kind of go together as the stuff under the ground is paid for out of here and the stuff above ground paid out of the streets. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the wastewater plant expansion, which is set in tune just to get started to about $7.5 million. So that's kind of the financial outlook that we'll talk about. And then some of the things, and this is the first time I've done this, is talking about some budget priorities. And we'll talk about those a little bit more. The first one, maintaining a talented and dedicated workforce. This is pretty similar to what we've done before, doing some grid adjustments for some specific positions. And it really helps a lot of folks at the lower tiers. It increases our minimum starting salary. I think it does a lot to make us competitive in the workforce and take care of our people, because if it isn't for our people, we really don't have anything. So I think that's important. This next one is strengthen the city's role in economic development. This is one that is a pretty big change, and I think will continue to evolve as we discuss this. So I don't get too married to the thoughts in the budget message. We will talk about this one quite a little bit as we go along, and potentially come up with some solutions and different strategies that we'll gradually come back to you to make some decisions on. And then C, we're moving right along on water and wastewater capacity for future growth. But this is going to be something we continue to talk about. We continue to plan for. We continue to look for revenue resources. But I think it will really open the doors for this city for growth in the future. And then the fourth one is we have some really good facilities here. If you look at everything but the public works facility. So those are kind of old and worn out. We don't have enough storage for our equipment. This equipment's expensive. It needs to be stored inside. We need to have more material storage so that we can buy more bulk and save money in that. And it's just not an adequate facility anymore. So we're going to start the planning for that. How that will look, what that will cost, where it will be, is something that we'll start looking at in the budget. So that's kind of the outlook. You've got a lot of homework in front of you, but I'm going to help you with the cheat sheets, the Cliff Notes version of this. So you have the 2023, the one that says budget proposal. So that's everything. That's the $84.7 million. It's all in here. In the back, and we've done this, we've always had it like this, but you can actually read it this year. There's some folded up sheets. The green one's the good news, that's the revenues, and the red one's the little bit not so good news, the expenditures. But you go through those sheets right there, that is every dime that we will spend or make in the city's budget. It's really important to go through that. We break it down some other ways, and there's some other information in there. But those sheets are really, when we're talking about the budget next week and going through things, we'll really be using those. So getting to know those and seeing what questions you might have, especially for some of the new council folks here that you're looking at this the first time. I've used those sheets all through the planning process. Jordan's kept them updated. They'll continue to evolve through this process, but they're a great place to start. And then the second one is the capital outlay. In the middle of that, starting on page 5, you'll find a summary explanation that I'm more of a words guy than a number guy. So this is my sheet that I make and put together, and it shows the dollars and a little bit more descriptions, and we will go through that and talk about where they all come from. And so we'll spend a fair amount of time on that. You will be, when we're done with this, you will approve a resolution for the 5-year. We're always updating the 5-year. So there's some worksheets behind it. These are just the 23 numbers. So if you want to look at how it's projected into the future, those are the worksheets. They're a little bit smaller print. But again, you can see what we're projecting for the next 5 years from a capital improvement standpoint. And that's a good place to end this budget message, I think, is that you've got some homework to do. We're excited to share more with you next week, but we don't want to overindulge too much in that. But we really look forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Looking forward to that work session. Thank you, Jordan, for your dedicated effort on that topic. Looking forward to digging into some of these particular issues as we go. Move along to our public hearing and possible approval of the transfer of retail on-sale liquor restaurant license from Stacy Gossman, which does business as Scotty's Tavern and Burgers, to Eagle River LLC, which does business as Mulligan Sports Bar and Casino. Somebody be interested in carrying that motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Anyone have anything to contribute on this transfer? Then, Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got our public hearing and possible approval of the transfer of retail on-sale liquor license from Eagle River LLC, DBA Mulligan Sports Bar, to 5 Star Management LLC, DBA 719 North Main Street. I'm not sure if there's actual DBA listed there, but it doesn't seem to be in my description. Any which way, 5 Star Management. Anyone?
Moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Ronayne and a second from Councilman Reinbold on this liquor license transfer. Any discussion from anyone in the council? Jordan, would you give me a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Fauberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Rife,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got our possible approval to the appointment of Dewey Tuller to the Aberdeen Parks and Recreation Board for a term ending June 30th of 2024. And I did talk to Dewey, and he said he will pay attention to all issues and not just softball issues. Seems to be that fella's passion.
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilman Johnson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Move along to our recommendation to award the bid for the 8th Avenue Northeast Pavement Rehab Project to Reedy Construction for the amount of $910,000 or $910,072, as well as to authorize city manager and the finance officer to sign those necessary documents after approval by the city attorney. Robin, what have you got going on with that project?
Well, it's been a long-awaited project. We actually held it off for a couple of years because we were concerned about budgets and how the COVID issues were going to affect our overall revenues. So we did hold this project back. We've modified it a little bit. This is a dull bar retrofit. So we will be replacing some panels. We will be putting in some bars in the pavement to keep the pavement from shifting. We're getting a lot of movement in the soil, which is causing it to be a really rocky ride. Obviously, you can see based on the overall bid versus the engineer's estimate, there's quite a difference there, quite a discrepancy. We did, part of the things that we would attribute the change in cost to, we've got a fairly, once they start the project, they're under a fairly tight accelerated construction time frame, and we're actually, in order to facilitate that, we're actually going with a higher early strength, which will allow them to progress more quickly. Normally we would have 7-day strength requirements. This is going to be significantly higher strength concrete, so that's going to drive the price up. And then there's a lot of traffic control associated with it. So we think it's a fair price, and we're recommending approval, and we were actually fairly close in 2020 with what we had budgeted at $800,000, but we would recommend approval regardless of the discrepancy between the engineer's estimate and the overall bid.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson and a second from Councilman Ronayne. Does anyone have any questions for City Engineer Robin? Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. Robin, any thoughts on why there was only one bid submitted?
Well, the time of the year that we're bidding it, certainly only certain contractors may have room in their schedule, and of course, the fact that Reedy's do have work in town probably makes it a little easier for them to slip it into their schedule while their crews are here. So I would guess that maybe out-of-town crews may not have found it to be as attractive for them because they would have to mobilize. So,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Fulber?
Robin, what part of 8th Avenue is this?
this is going to go from Dakota Street to about High Street. So that piece east of Tiffany School, which is definitely the roughest riding section we've got.
And how many years has it been since that was surfaced?
This is under 10 years,
Yeah.
and that's the embarrassing part about it. These dowel bars could have been put in. We did not realize at the time how much shift in the soil we were going to end up with. It's an unfortunate after the fact change, but we do need to do it. So
is that same soil on Dakota where you're doing replacements right now?
it would be similar, and we are doing the dowel bars. We have done the dowel bars basically since these projects. So we're making sure that we're transferring that load from panel to panel is what ends up happening. And without those panels, and you'll see them up and down interstate. If you take a look, you'll see on a lot of the interstate projects, they cut these bars in to try to keep that rolliness out of the pavement. And it's something that you do after the fact if the pavement shifts too much.
Thank you very much for the questions and explanations. Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote for that bid acceptance?
Councilmember Norvstrup.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Fauberg.
Aye.
Ronayne.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got a review and approval of claims and payrolls. We've got the bills with the addition of the one that I had mentioned earlier in the meeting to Wells Fargo Commercial, as well as our payroll for the pay period of July 17th through the 30th. Can I get a motion to pay those bills and payrolls?
Move to approve with the earlier addition.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Feel free to abstain from any particular listings if need be. Jordan.
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Fauberg.
Aye, and I can abstain from repaying myself for my own travel, I suppose.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Norvstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got our city manager's report. Joe, what have you got for us tonight?
Well, some exciting things to talk about. One, today's the budget day, but tomorrow's a great day too, or more so a night, because it's National Night Out. So both chiefs are in the back. They're probably going to be working all night long, working on final arrangements for this. But their departments take a big lead in this event, and there will be families and children running all over the park tomorrow night from 6 to 9, so that's exciting. I also wanted to just kind of mention something that I'm going to talk about tomorrow night there, so I guess I'm ruining it, and you might not have to go to this second event too, but if you think back to 2020, that was my first year here, and we were battling COVID, but the law enforcement community was battling some real public image issues. And this is the good news that it wasn't really happening here, and we're thankful for that. And actually, what we found is the public still has a lot of trust in our police department. And there was an initiative, and Councilman Reif kind of helped take the lead on this. He was approached by some folks, I believe, and talked about could we do some private fundraising for the police department to show that our community supports them and help support them in some of their initiatives. And one of the things they were really focused on is health and wellness of our police officers. So this fund was established in 21. Some businesses, some private individuals gave some money to it. We keep it documented in the city funds, but it's only used at the recommendation of the police chief and my approval for certain initiatives. And so we've done some community policing initiatives. There have been some bicycles purchased for children, the Shop with the Cop event. Some of those funds have gone for that. In support of community policing, you see these fun little vehicles, UTVs. So one of those was purchased last year and has been utilized a lot, especially for athletic events at Northern and patrolling the parking lots. That's been very helpful. But then, like I said, some money has been utilized for health and safety of our officers, purchasing some fitness equipment, paying for some medical testing, optional medical testing, just to make sure they're all in great shape. And I think our officers have appreciated it. I think it's giving them some tools to enhance our community. And the great news is it's not tax dollars. It's private dollars from private citizens. We're still silently doing some fundraising. I think we need to get a little bit louder so they can keep doing it in the future years. But again, thanks to Councilman Rife, he came up with this idea. The mayor put together some promotional information, and it's really been pretty quiet. But I think it was important to share that with you of where that money's coming from and how it's being used. And then really just to leave you, this is probably the most I talk in any given meeting, but they've got some really good news. So the South Dakota High School Athletic Association this year, I guess, determined that girls softball would be added as an official sport in the high schools for the first time. And so that's good news. We like to see that. But the better news is they need a place to play their state tournament. And I guess they heard, Dewey must have told them that we're a softball town. And there's a couple of great opportunities here. One that the $4.5 million of investment to build new fields up north in the Players Field complex really give us some of the best fields going. So if you're talking about all the classifications of high school girls softball coming here the first weekend in June and playing the state tournament. And so all of the kind of I would call elimination games, the early round games will be played up at the Players Field on the new complexes. And then for all of the classes, they will get to transition for the championship games down to Northern, to the new softball stadium down there, which is just state of the art. So these young ladies will get to play their first season and their first championship games in some of the best facilities here. So it'll bring people to town, and we'll get to host that. And I know our Parks and Rec department's really excited about that, and our softball association. And we spend some money on this stuff, but we get to share it with people throughout the state, and I think that's great news. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Joe. I would agree. Great news on the softball tournaments, and that's not even the first softball tournaments that'll be hosted here. So I would take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Get a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilman Johnson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.